morning to my esteemed panel speakers here, the CEOs. Yeah, good morning. So, perhaps I'll do quick introduction of myself, and then I'm going to hand over to each one of you to speak about yourself and the company that you have. So, my name is Tanny Yeo. I'm from UPS, United Parcel Service, and I am right now the HR business partner for Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa region. And UPS, we have adopted the hybrid work environment, and so far it's really working well. And I would really love to hear from the three CEOs here in terms of what your company has done, and we can explore further during our discussion session. So perhaps Dr. Timothy Low, you could help us by introducing yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Tanny. I'm Timothy Lau, and I run the Farrer Park Hospital. Actually, the building itself is called Connection, and we have a 5-star hotel called One Farrer Hotel, Farrer Park Hospital, and Farrer Park Medical Center. So it's 3 in 1 within a complex. And you will find that it's actually 2 different industry. The hotel industry is a hospitality industry, and then of course the hospital is healthcare. So sometimes people say it's called hospital, and this is actually important because 10 years ago when we planned the complex, it was built with a pandemic in mind, not knowing that we'll hit a pandemic, but it was planned with a pandemic in mind. We'll discuss it subsequently. But what's important is in any organizational change, it's a journey, and we need to have emotional intelligence, what I call emotelligence, so that we can navigate this conundrum effectively.
Thank you. And over to Epe. Thank you.
Good morning. I run a distribution business based in Singapore. We represent about 25 brands from different parts of the world. But what I've realized over the last 2 years is actually two things. One is the need to spread your net geographically into a wider sourcing base. We've had a lot of supply chain disruptions with the recent increase in freight rates, shutting down of ports. We have now expanded our geographic reach to over 20 different countries around the world. We represent 25 different brands, all the way from the US, Italy, Netherlands, and Southeast Asia. But what has also been very apparent over the past few months is the need for digital transformation. So we are in an environment where efficiencies are becoming critical, and of course, I mean the workforce, the challenge to get talented workforce, and upskilling workforce, digital transformation is not becoming a choice anymore; is becoming a necessity. So what we do actually in the company is it's a typical distribution business where we import food products all the way from wheat flour to rice to pasta sauces and ready-to-eat foods, and we distribute to over 2,000 points all across Singapore. The pandemic has been quite challenging for us. We have had most of our people on site because with truckers and pickers and packers, I mean it's very difficult to work from home. But we are adapting a process which is semi, 50% on, 50% off for some of our workforce who can do that. This saves time. It gives them more opportunity to work more efficiently from different parts of the island or wherever they are. It cuts down on travel time. But more about that, I mean, further on in the discussion, I'll pass on to.
Thanks. Good morning to all of you. Nice to be here in this gathering. So my profile and introduction was already covered. So basically, I set up and I run a strategy consulting company. And the previous background is in Hewlett-Packard, Asia Pacific, and with Singtel. In both those cases, I had responsibility across several countries. And therefore, diversity of managing workforce, including in case of Singtel, there were a few where the number of people was pretty small and effectively they were operating from home, while the team here, obviously those days, they were working from the office. So that is one perspective. The second is the insights that I have gleaned from discussions with several people. Just to give a bit more of that background, uh, I was the founding president of the IIM Alumni Network, so about almost 2,000 alumni here, who are holding variety of important positions across many different industries. So that network and the insights gleaned from that, as well as the work that I'm doing in this. For example, I'm advisor to one HR tech company who are focused on learning and development. So again, so there are these kind of insights. So basically what I intend to cover when we get into the discussions is to really, do we need to be looking at things from fixed frame? So for example, right in the beginning, the question was asked, who prefers work from home, who prefers work from office, and hybrid and so on. So does it have to be really uh, bracketed into those three? Secondly, there are labels of people who tend to say Gen Z prefers this, back office should be like this, front office should be that, and so on. So there, should we really be looking at things from that fixed frame? And finally, much of the discussion when it comes to return to office and flexible work arrangements, they all tend to focus only on job deliverables. But where is the focus on talent development, and how do all these configurations take those into account? So more of that later. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And each one of you comes from different industry. We have tech industry, we have distribution industry, as well as healthcare. So obviously, each one of you have implemented different permutation, different ways of working from office and work. So I would like to hear from all of you. How has it worked for you? What are the challenges perhaps you have seen, and what are the ways that you think you could work on to overcome it from a CEO's perspective? Because majority of the audience, I was told, are from HR. So I think it would be nice to hear from a CEO's perspective. What, from your lens, what do you see in terms of your organizations working from office or home or hybrid perspective?
Okay, let me just start off first. The healthcare industry, as you can imagine, you cannot take care of patients from home. Your patients are there, you need to be on site, taking care of the patients. The hospitality industry, the hotel, you cannot take care of your guests from home. You have to take care of your guests on site. So it depends on which sector you're in. If you are in a sector whereby it's essential services, you need to be on site. If you are a police, in the police, if you're a policeman, you have to be on site. So we take this opportunity. Right? Why do I say that we built the building with a pandemic in mind? Because we have a hotel, we have a hospital and medical center. The hotel, when the pandemic hit, we can quickly repurpose the hotel into a quarantine isolation area immediately. And because the borders are closed, there are no tourists coming into Singapore. All hotels are hit. But we quickly reskill and upskill our hotel staff. This is an opportunity to reskill and upskill. We reskill them to do swabbing. We reskill them to take care of simple monitoring of isolation. I wouldn't say patients. Those in isolation, quarantine, they're actually those that need to be isolated, but not a patient. And hotel staff can be reskilled, upskilled to do this. Of course, if anything happens, the hospital is just within the building itself next door. So we need to inculcate into the staff in terms of why we are doing this, why we are upskilling them. We need to also maintain their jobs. A lot of hotels, they let go of maybe half or more of their employees, right? You cannot hold too many employees for 2 years with the borders closed. and that is very challenging episode for hoteliers. But we can quickly reskill and upskill. As to working from home, as I said, depending on the sectors, backroom people, we can let them work from home, but frontliners and those providing the service, they have to be on site.
Thank you. That was very insightful. A bit of my experience over the last couple of years. I mean, when the pandemic hit, we did not release a single employee. I mean, we in fact hired more and tried to increase our workforce because we're very much an on-site company, just as for hospitals. We need people to pick and pack and distribute. But what we did do, I mean, and that was also on the guidance of the Ministry of Singapore, is that we changed working hours. So we staggered working hours for the employees, so everybody didn't come in at the same time. We had almost a full attendance on site, except for a few people who were stuck in Malaysia due to the closure of the borders. They work from home, but we implemented a staggered, timing, which now has become a permanent feature in the company and is working very well for us. So we bring the warehouse operation starts earlier. It starts at 8 o'clock, and by the time all the trucks have left, they've been loaded and they've been left. Then the admin staff and the rest of the team comes in. But moving forward, I mean, and I see the future work. I have in fact coined a new phrase last week and sent a message out to all my employees, given the existing inflationary scare that's taking place, and it's a real thing. Inflation is going up, prices are going up, and it's going up for everyone. No matter if you're a high income, earner in a company or a low income earner in the company, inflation is affecting everyone. So last week, I took the effort to write a letter to everyone in the organization that I'm going to be sitting on a one-to-one with everyone to understand their needs, understand their pain points, and see how we can help as a company. So there will be an increase in everyone's base salary starting from the 1st of July. So we're having the discussions this week and next week onwards, but we will be implementing from the 1st of July. But the most important thing which I feel that companies should adopt is what I would term as an opportunity to earn more. And in most organizations, the sales department is incentivized. So the more you sell, the more incentives you make, the more money you make, and so on and so forth. But the admin and the logistics, they really don't have the opportunity to earn more. So I am implementing that. I mean, we are working on a process and a system where every employee in the organization will have an opportunity to earn more. I'm not doing this out of loyalty, and it's not that I'm doing this because I want to, but I just feel that everybody has the right to earn more, and everybody has the right to have the opportunity to earn or to get an income and deserve and to get what they deserve really, because they're just performing better than the average. So that's one thing which I'm implementing into the organization, and I think it's something which everybody should look at. That why should not everyone, and why should it only be the sales department which gets incentivized? The second thing that we're looking at is the opportunity to work from anywhere. So whereas the logistics department is needs to be on site, but however, a lot of the planning work, the routing of trucks and routing doesn't necessarily need to be done on site. So we have supervisors, who sit back after hours and, they plan the route and they plan the truck distributions, after hours. And I think this could be done anywhere. So, you could have somebody on an 8 to 5 job, but leave at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, spend more time at home, and then spend the 5 to 7 o'clock in the evening, planning routes and planning deliveries later on. So we're looking at, implementing in the logistics as well a flexible work arrangement. We have a lot of plans coming out. I mean, one promise I made to my warehouse team yesterday is that I promise that every person in the logistics team will get an opportunity to earn above average in the entire industry. So we have a huge problem in picking, packing, and manual labor in Singapore. I mean, staff doesn't like to stay, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to stay because it's just about not earning enough. So we give a very conducive environment. I mean, we have music playing. I mean, we have different nationalities, and they play their own music. So we've got loud music playing in the warehouse. Everyone's highly motivated. We've got lunch breaks. But now have a promise that, look, if you're working in the company and you're the most efficient, I will guarantee that there's no other industry or company in my industry that will be able to give you the opportunity to earn as much as you can earn in my organization. I think we can carry on with this a bit more. I mean, pass it over to you.
Thanks. Uh, Let me start with a story I heard from uh, a friend of mine. So he is a C-level executive, large multinational. So he related the story of this person who had joined the company um, at the beginning of COVID starting. So he happened to come for overseas recruitment, came into Singapore, COVID restrictions began, and he couldn't have gone out of the country because had he gone out, he wouldn't have been allowed in the country. Here he is, doesn't have any friends and whatever. Therefore, he preferred to work from office versus working from home because that made more sense for him, and that was possible for kind of job he did. Uh, so what happened is many of the senior executives too happened to be in the office. So this person, besides doing his job, got an opportunity uh, near the coffee machine or whatever. You're interacting with other people and so on and so forth. Fast forward to now, the person ended up getting a couple of promotions. So what is the message here? So in his case, besides doing his job, getting whatever uh, hard training things were required, that was done, but he was getting coaching and mentoring, informally interacting with people, which wouldn't have been possible. Now, I'm not trying to say that work from home is bad or whatever. The point I'm trying to get to is talent development has many different facets. There are formal ways of doing it, but there are many informal attributes that you get by interacting with people. Uh, and therefore, in designing whatever configurations that we get into, this aspect also needs to be taken into account. Otherwise, mostly, uh, whether that is HR or business executives, they tend to look at things only from the work deliverables perspective, while not really focusing on what it is that is needed from a talent development perspective. The other thing also is that if you look at the evolution of work, we all come from an era where people were organized around work. Now, COVID came in, and then very rapidly, companies figured out how to organize work around people. It looks like we come into a stage where we've forgotten that COVID ever existed, and it is going back into some of those things as well. Again, the point I want to emphasize is that uh, if the management, together with the employee, we need to look at what are the business outcomes, since the question was what are the CEOs looking for? They clearly are looking at what are the business outcomes that I desire. And specifically at an employee level, there will be whatever the deliverables are of that job. On the other side, you have the employee aspirations, whether that be career oriented or what kind of work arrangements that they are comfortable with. Within that as well, nothing is static, nothing is also stereotyped. As an example, somebody with a young child or young children in the family could say that I want to work from home because I need to look after the children. In another family, the person could say, I want to work from office because I can't work at home with the children disturbing me all the time. So the stereotypes need to go away, and we need to get into what is it that will maximize the potential of the employee and contribute to the business results. So in this context, what is it that needs to happen? The usual tendency until COVID came in, work from home was considered an exception, and typically only a CEO could approve it. And things change rapidly. Even trading rooms of the banks that moved out. So the regulator also cooperated with in all these scenarios, but we are back into those. So what needs to happen is that the immediate managers need to learn how to empathize. At the same time, they also need to be empowered so that the arrangements that are most suitable to that particular work output and that particular employee circumstance can be taken into account, versus a one size fits all kind of silos that we tend to get into. And therefore, question was asked about future of work, whether it's already here or about to come or uncertain or whatever. Uh, I'll just handle it in two parts. I believe future is already here in terms of, I mean, we used to talk about disruption, this, that, and so on. That is already here. But future already here in terms of understanding these nuances and therefore daring to come up with more robust models in how we look at how we organize work and so on. And in this, I'll end with making just one other point. Many of you are HR leaders with regional or global responsibility. So let's not look at things only from the lens of Singapore. Singapore, smaller geography, some of these things are relevant. But when it comes to larger countries or multinational responsibilities, so what if somebody wanted flexible work arrangement and said, let me go back to my country and work from there? How would that work? So I had the example of another friend of mine, CEO of an IT firm, a large delivery team in India. So after COVID, he wanted to do a CEO kickoff. The people had dispersed all over India. So they all said that you have to pay airfare and hotel. Otherwise, why should we come? We are comfortable where we are. But he says, I want to have a team kickoff. So they said, you want to meet us? Well, so again, it might sound a little bit facetious, but the point is, these are all the nuances that need to be looked at as we look at whatever the work arrangements that make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like there's so much to learn from each one of you. I mean, I've got like 2 pages of notes already written, which I will summarize later for all of you. I'm looking at time as well, and I would encourage questions from the audience if you have. So while waiting, I have another question for the three of you, because I read an article about return to work, and it says that there seems to be different understanding between bosses and employees about what the office is for, right? What the office is for. So at the end of the day, everyone has their own different interpretation in terms of how best to spend their times. So the article also talk about there's a need for bosses to have control over things around them. The bosses here, I'm referring to the CEOs, of course. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, we all must accept that the new norm in work is that work can be borderless and it can be effective. My comms head for the hospital is actually based in the US. But she's doing communications, so it can be based anywhere. Right? So it's borderless, and employers need to accept that it's something that we need to give trust to our employees. If you give trust to your employees, they will actually be more creative, right? They want to get their work done. There are some KPIs that they need to accomplish, and that actually builds the autonomy and creativity of the employee. So bosses and employers need to have that kind of mindset. Whereas for the employees, they need to know that there's certain accountability towards the organization. If you're working in that organization, you need to make sure that you deliver. So there's certain outcomes, outcome based in terms of work that needs to be done. It's a symbiotic mindset between employers and employees.
I'm going to address your question on CEOs being in control. So we're an SME. I mean, so we have between 40 and 50 people working for us. So we're not a very large organization. So over the past few years, I've seen some of the people in the organization go well beyond the call of duty. I've seen them rise up to to heights which I've never imagined before. Take control, take ownership. So addressing your point about control, I'm on a different path, and I'm going to be forming what could be called a board of directors, which are going to be representatives from every department in the organization. So decision making isn't going to be only mine. A lot of mistakes that do take place in organizations, whether they're SMEs or larger organizations, is that sometimes the CEO is too much in control, and I'm completely removing that bias, absolutely. And we are forming a small board of people from the sales department, admin department, and we will sit together once a month and discuss on the future of the company and what we need to do to implement and what needs to be done moving forward. So I believe that control should be now spread out. I don't think any one person should be in control at all.
Uh, so I think the traditional approach to office, where the big boss comes into the office, sees, uh, floor full of people, derives that sense of power, the ego is massaged, and so on. Uh, so those mindsets probably still exist, implicitly or explicitly. I mean, there are or also the feeling of comfort that you can see your entire team and therefore believe that that is the right way to do it. So a couple of things, since the question was on the office. So one of the things is, do we necessarily need these big offices where everybody is in the same building, particularly the experience of COVID? Uh, do you necessarily need that? Can it be uh, another arrangement where there are essentially neighborhood offices, if you will? Now, there are examples. Some other companies are already doing it, but then the C-suite executives need to be flexible enough because they need to move around. So, for example, a large company, and let's say you set up 5 satellite offices in Singapore. So now the big guys are the one who need to move around, while people could pick the closest office that they can work with. Now, it's a bit of a radical thought. So instead of you going to where the bosses are, the bosses come to where you are. So that's possible. There has to be openness from both sides, the employees as well as the bosses, to figure this out. Uh, Within this, there will be some pluses and some minuses, and hopefully there will be bigger pluses. So the whole mindset of office, as in a very physical context, needs to, within that, there should be flexibility or focus on how can you possibly distribute even. Uh, uh, well, the DS manpower, who's Mr. Hong, who spoke earlier. Uh, so even government agencies. So does it need to be the services are centralized in specific buildings? Can it be some government agencies? Few of them can be mixed up together in some building and so on. So there are possibilities, provided we are willing to experiment with alternatives and willing to take chances.
Thank you. So, in summary, it sounds like all of you feels that there's a need for empowerment, a need for flexibility, and also looking at the needs of the business and employees at the same time. But at the end of the day, we are all looking for deliverables, right? Because businesses, we need to thrive from outputs. So, thank you very much for the sharing. So, I wonder if there's any question from the audience. Yes, I see a hand over there.
Hello, good morning. I just want to ask the panel a question and give one little bit of context. The question is, are soft skills really the hard skills. And I want to go back to Minister Poon's point about the need for balance. And, when you've got employees working, their ability to balance home and work is really critical. Now, that means they at home have or wherever they are, have the ability to say no. And saying no, as everyone knows, is a difficult behavior. On the other hand, the manager, wherever the manager's sitting, needs to have the ability to be open to the employees saying no and setting their own boundaries. This is a critical issue across the world. Such behaviors will not be done just by simple platitudes. They need training, which is why I asked the question.
So if I allow me to paraphrase your question, so the ability to say no, it can be difficult.
Well, my point is that behaviors such as saying no and behaviors such as being open to employees having direct communication back, these are all behaviors. I should declare an interest. My business is called Hard Skills, and we teach soft skills. We think it's a misnomer. But my point is that mindsets and behaviors are critical, both for the employee there, for the ability to directly communicate, which most people find it very difficult to say no, especially to their boss. But it's critical for outcomes if no is the right answer. And the managers need to have the behavioral ability to be open to the employee saying no.
Thank you for your point. And I think the main question is, do managers have the ability to manage employees based on the right behavior that is expected within an organization? And on the other hand, do employees are given the opportunity to be trained and also the environment that allows them to behave in the way that is positive for the business environment? Any comment on this? Anyone?
I think as employers, you need to have the mindset that first thing, you need to trust your employees, right? And with automation coming into play, I mean, time is coming up. I'm just like to say that we need to use high tech to nurture the high touch, so that we can have an emotional impact on your employees or those who you need to influence for this change to happen.
How about, Sanjay?
I would say that interesting question, and when it comes to soft skills and so on, cultural context is also important. I mean, even saying no, for example. So I worked in an American multinational, and I also worked in what is called a GLC, a government linked corporation. Culturally quite different, and therefore what would have worked effectively in one setting wouldn't work the same way, assuming that you are interacting exactly the same way. So those nuances are important, and within that, the managers also display some of those cultural attributes. So sensitivity to that is important. Now, within that, pretty much if you ask any manager, they'll say, yes, I am open to my employees challenging me, and so on. The devil is in the detail. I mean, which manager is going to say that I don't encourage healthy pushback, constructive criticism, and so on? Everyone is going to say that that's what they do. Now, is the C-suite taking sufficient care that such sensitivity training is being given to the managers so that they understand what it actually means? Thanks.
Any further comment? Yeah. Okay. So, in view of time, I think we need to wrap up. So thank you very much. Sorry that we can only have one question, but we have learned so much from the three of you, CEOs. So thank you very much. I think the key takeaways would be that from a CEO standpoint, from a leader standpoint, we need to communicate with the employees, understand the needs out there, at the same time able to also explain the expectations in terms of accountability and deliverables. I think more importantly there is no one size fits all for all return to work approach. There's need to be an ability to look at the organizational requirements as well as the behavioral expectation that creates the culture that's needed for the organization. So with that, thank you very much, gentlemen.